What's going on with Damian Lillard? Let's get into this.
Dosage. Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Okay.
Quickly before we get the video started, if you guys enjoy this video and want to see more NBA content just like this one, hit that subscribe button and that post notification bell. Anyways, back to the video. I think at this point we all know that Dame is one of the best players in the NBA, and I also think it's a pretty fair assumption to say that Dame is a top 7 player, in my opinion even higher than that, a top 5 player in the NBA. Dame is a perfect example of why putting in all that extra work either during the offseason, putting that extra work after practice, putting that extra work after a game, all those things that Dame personally does, he really showed over the years why it's so important. When you look at Dame, originally when he got drafted into the NBA, he was seen as a very talented point guard with a ton of potential going forward for sure, but he also wasn't necessarily seen as a generational talent, and when he was drafted originally, I don't think anybody expected him to get to the point where he is at currently. And when you look at Dame's numbers throughout the years, you just see him getting better and better and better until eventually he got to the point where he's at currently. A top 7 player in the NBA to be conservative, and also in terms of true NBA point guards, I think it's pretty safe to say that he's a top 2 or 3 true point guard in the NBA. But after all the success that Dame has had basically throughout his whole NBA career, this season he's certainly struggling. And when you look at the numbers, Dame this year is actually having one of the worst seasons of his NBA career, which is kind of crazy to say. As I mentioned before in the video, when you look at each and every season for Dame, typically what he does is not only is he consistently good, but he actually gets better and better each and every season. That's the beauty of Dame, and when you look at a lot of superstar players, that's typically what you see, them just getting better and better. But this season, for whatever reason, Dame is certainly struggling. When you actually look at the numbers, his numbers are basically down across the board. He's averaging 21 points per game on 39% shooting from the field, 4.3 rebounds per game, and also adding 7.7 assists. But the real question of the video is, why is Dame struggling so much? Now quickly before I get into my answer for why Dame is struggling in my opinion, I just want to quickly mention, some people may watch this video and say, what are you talking about? How are you saying Dame is struggling with those numbers? Those are actually really good numbers, which is 100% true and I agree with 100%. But the reason why I'm bringing up this question is based on the type of production that Dame has been putting out throughout his whole NBA career. This season he's just not living up to that. And I feel like more than anything else, if I'm talking about Dame and saying that 21 points per game, 4.3 rebounds per game, and 7.7 assists per game is a down season for a guy, I feel like more so than anything else, that's the biggest compliment you can give a player. If those numbers, which obviously are very good and most players in the NBA would be dying to have numbers like that, if that's considered a down year for that player, how good is that player? It really just shows you how great of a player that guy is. But I just wanted to get that out of the way before I really got into my points. Now the first possible reason for why Dame is struggling so much is the season just started. Every player, no matter how good you are, always goes through some cold spells. You talk about guys like LeBron James, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, all these all-time greats have all lost their confidence or had a cold spell at one point in their careers. Maybe it lasts for a few games, maybe it lasts for a few weeks, a few months, a few years even. There's always times where all-time greats completely lose all their confidence or just don't play well whatsoever, but always come back from it. That's the real key, and that's the real reason why those players are so good and seen as so great actually. Basically what I'm trying to say is this happens all the time. Now of course this is not the first time that Dame has been struggling. There's been a ton of different stretches where Dame just completely went cold. Maybe he didn't play well for a few weeks, maybe a few games, whatever. Of course this is not the first time, so I have all the confidence in the world that Dame will eventually regain his confidence and regain his shooting touch and just completely become the same player that we know and love, and hopefully even get better. And as I mentioned before in the video, we're only 21 games into the season, so maybe Dame is just having a cold spell that lasts maybe 21 games, maybe 25, 30, 35, half a season. Who knows how long it's going to last, but maybe Dame is just in a cold spell and we just have to give him time to regain his confidence back, because as I said before, I'm very confident that he will. Now maybe another possible reason for why Dame is struggling this season is they just hired a new head coach in head coach Chauncey Billups. Whenever you hire a new head coach, everything completely changes. Maybe there's some similarities to the previous coach to get some familiarity going and keeping some continuity, but overall whenever you hire a new coach, things for the most part are going to change, and maybe Dame just needs to take some time to get used to it. There's a different language in calling plays. Of course there's different plays that they're going to call. There's a different philosophy offensively and defensively. Maybe they practice a little bit differently than they used to. Overall, when you hire a new head coach, there's so many different things that you may not even think of that changes for all these players. So maybe that has somewhat of a effect on Dame early on. And that's not to say that Chauncey Billups isn't a good head coach. It just maybe Dame is not necessarily used to all the changes that Chauncey's bringing in, and it's just going to take him some time to necessarily get used to it. Now, another possible reason could be his running mate and CJ McCollum just recently got diagnosed with a collapsed lung, and he's going to be out indefinitely. Now, this is pretty significant because when you have a player like CJ on your team, especially as your sidekick, he's going to take a ton of pressure off a guy like Dame, because of course Dame is still the best player on the team and is going to get the most attention, seeing doubles, sometimes even triple teams. But when you have a guy in CJ on your team that clearly has the ability to create for himself and others, it just takes so much pressure off a guy like Dame. And if Dame is having an off night, the team could still win because they have CJ on their team, of course. But now with CJ being out for an indefinite amount of time, that puts a ton more pressure on Dame because there's not too many other players on his team that can create for themselves, especially the way CJ could. So of course that could potentially be another reason. There's also some newer players on his team that maybe he's not necessarily used to. The competition both in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference has certainly gotten a lot better from where it was last year and in previous years, and maybe he just needs to adjust to that. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's not good enough to play there, but maybe he just needs to adjust to the new competition. Maybe the new foul rules have an effect on him, just a lot more physical play in the NBA this year compared to previous years. Overall, there's a million different explanations to why Dame is struggling this year, but overall the most important part is not that Dame is struggling, but the question is, could he ever get back to the point where he was at previously? And I think everybody watching this video can agree that he will get back to that point. He's just way too talented, and I don't think anybody is scared about it. Trade rumors as well could have an effect. There's just so many different points, as I mentioned. But hopefully going forward for Dame, he could start to figure it out and actually get out of this cold spell. And if he starts to play a lot better, of course the Blazers would start to play a lot better as well. And hopefully for their sake, they can get back into the playoff hunt and not only make the playoffs, hopefully actually do something once they get to the playoffs, which I'm not necessarily confident in, but hopefully for their sake they can actually do something. But we'll see what happens going forward with Damian Lillard. We'll see what happens with the Blazers and the rest of the NBA. We'll see how it unfolds. But anyways, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Why do you guys personally think Dame is struggling this year? But anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did enjoy, please leave a like and subscribe and hit that post notification bell. It really helps me out a lot. Until the next time, peace out, guys.
Oh yeah, I work with the medics. I'm about to get you injected. I got a couple connections so I can get you prosthetics. Hope you can't go where I'm headed.